My name is Ken Masson. I'm the co-president of the Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy. We're a Rotary Club that's been around for about 5 years, and we focus on advocating for the human rights for people with disabilities on a global level. And I have the pleasure here to have with me today a couple of people that have written a book, particularly on inclusive education in the continent of Africa. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. So we have Dr. Doreen and Dr. Joanne with us today. And I'm going to start out this conversation with asking for each one of you to give me a little introduction of yourself. So let's start with you, Dr. Doreen.
Yes, thank you so much, Ken, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Doreen Myrie. I currently serve as a teacher educator, special education professor here in Mississippi at Jackson State University. And my role is preparing teachers who are going to be teaching kids with disabilities. And prior to that, I worked in K for about 18 years. And I served as a special education teacher in self-contained resource, and also as a core teacher in the general education classroom. And I think it was that experience that I had in those 18 years, that made me really consider teaching a teacher educator as a career later on, because I felt like a lot of improvements that we need to make in inclusive education should start at the teacher preparation stage. And so, I'm really happy that I have the opportunity to do what I do now. I've always been interested in working with people with special needs. I come from a family of educators, generations of educators, I should say. But I can remember as early as second grade, always wanting to assist the teacher, help a student that was, struggling in the class. I was always very interested to do that. And so to me that this is just something that is kind of natural to me. I have an interest in it that I really enjoy very much. Yes, and I'm a researcher also. I am also a children's writer. And I serve in the community as well, volunteering with activities for people with disabilities in various settings. Yes, so I think that's that about me. I'm going to pass this on to Dr. Anokuru.
Hi, thank you, Ken, for having me here and for setting up this, interview as we talk about the book and the project we've worked on. So my name is Dr. Joanne Anokuru. I'm a special educator and inclusive educator side by side. I wear both hats. I presently work as a district resource teacher with the Vancouver School Board, where we go from school to school building capacity for teachers who are struggling with, supporting learners with exceptionalities in their classrooms. And one other duties we do there, it's also organizing professional development as well as for educators. And I also teach as an adjunct prof or sessional lecturer at the University of British Columbia in the Department of Counseling, Psychology, and Special Education. And I would say over the years, my entire role, because my background, my BEd, my master's degree, my PhD is all in special ed. And I would like to speak to my doctorate degree, where I actually conducted research in Nigeria, looking at, I brought in the voices of young adults I worked with 30 years ago, their parents, policymakers, and teachers on how to inform inclusive education, because most times we conduct research, we tend to exclude the voices of people living with this disability. And I felt there was a need for us to hear from them firsthand. And and I sit on so many other boards of so many schools and organizations, basically bringing in the importance of what it is that we need to do to support learners with exceptionalities in whatever space we find ourselves in. Also, doing so much research and writing with Dr. Myri, Dr. Igebo, and some Dr. Dowd, Dr. Idakwo, and so many other. And I've presented at so many conferences. 2 years ago, I spoke at the autism conference in Nigeria as well, the GT Bank Autism Conference. And I'm excited to be here to share about this new book. Thank you, Ken.
Sorry, I've got dogs barking in the background, so I muted myself. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So and I appreciate the two of you being here talking about it, and particularly talking here about your book, which is called Against the Odds, and you say championing inclusive education across Africa. Now, can you tell me what either one of you or both, what was the motivation for writing this book?
John, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So in 2000, and that was 2024, I met with Doreen, I'd met with Dr. Gable, and I was like, the idea came from me. I was like, I think it's time, we're all in different parts of the world, but I think it's time where we come together as educators in different parts. But one thing that was holding all of us was that we're all from our motherland, the continent of Africa. How is it that we can all share, our different topics about inclusive education, special education to educators across Africa? So we kept going back and forth with this conversation. I think this was in 2023. This was 2023. This was back end, the conversations going on, and we did a call out. We actually posted the workshop. It was actually UDL. The title of the workshop was UDL for African Educators. Ken, within 2 minutes of us posting the event out, we had 50 people sign up from different parts of Africa. By the time we closed the workshop, we had 200 people who had registered, over 200 people. And so we had this workshop which held on in the month of February in 2024, 3 Saturdays back to back. And we had 8 speakers. Doreen was one of our guest speaker. And also, no, you were the keynote, right? Doreen was the keynote. And we also had another Dr. Carly Christensen as the keynote. And we had other facilitators. And so after that, we kept talking. We looked at different workshops. We looked at different ideas. And we said, okay, it's time for us. We've done this workshop. We've done the presentation. Let's now, for 2024, let's do a call out to some of these educators to share their stories on how everything they've learned, how are they pushing for inclusive educations in their schools, in their school spaces, in their classrooms, in their communities, in their countries. Again, we had a number of people from different parts of Africa who had attended the conference send in so when we did the call out, that was in the month of August in 2024, we had a lot of people sending their abstract and their intent. And that was what really motivated us to it's time for us to get educators share the story, because most times you find research is always from people in the university, higher education, who are constantly doing research. But this time around, we want to hear from the people in the schools, the teachers, telling us how are they, pushing in everything they've heard, the research in their school spaces. What are some of the odds towards them engaging with different learners in their classroom spaces, especially knowing fully well that our schools, our classrooms are so inclusive, are so diverse, but still, we all know that in certain countries, there's little funding, little resources, access to all of this, but these teachers are doing it. Doreen, you want to add to it?
Yes. So in addition to what Joan has mentioned already, I was particularly curious to learn about what is going on in the different countries. Yes, I knew that there were challenges, but against the odds, what actually are they doing to support their learners? Because I knew that there was a lot of creativity, and these are the kind of stories that we don't hear about. But I was curious to see what it is that they have done, within their capacity to support children with disabilities in their settings, knowing the challenges that are there. And it was just so fascinating. Actually, I learned so much, from reading, their contributions. And the fact that we were able to pull from the different parts of Africa, if you see the different countries that we pulled from, yes, there was diversity in what's going on, but then there was also, you could see some similarities, like genuine care and genuine compassion to really try to support the kids in the best way that they can. And that was it was a phenomenal project to be a part of. Like John said, as a researcher, a lot of times we write about what's going on in Africa without necessarily hearing from the teachers themselves. But this book allowed us to have their voice be heard out there, and so it made it very special for us. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, and for those, I assume people that are listening know what inclusive education is, but there may not be some. Can one of you or both of you again answer what is inclusive education?
Ken?
Yeah, now can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Oh,
couldn't
okay,
hear
no,
you.
okay, sorry. My question was, what is inclusive education?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. And I will tell you, let me start. Inclusive education is still evolving. It is still evolving. Inclusive education could be seen from different, if depending on how you see it, from what lens. Education for people with, disability, education for, it could be race, it could be gender, depending on what content you're looking at. But the goal is meeting the needs of all learners in the classroom space, no matter what environment you find yourself in. How is it that this can be done in our school spaces? Goes a long way. The teachers, it starts with number one, the environment. The school itself is an ecosystem that entails the different structures, the teachers, the learners, the structures. It could be physical structures, it could be the curriculum, ensuring that all of this is designed to meet the needs of every single learner. And how is it that every learner who comes into that school space can access learning, however that is being designed? I love Katie Novak's analogy where she uses the analogy of the food, where in the sense where everyone is invited to dinner. But if you put all the meal together in a plate and serve every one of us, you exclude certain people. For some who are gluten, who need to eat gluten-free diet, or some people who are lactose intolerant, or some people who are vegetarian, or some people who are pescatarians, all of that. Imagine if in that meal you mix everything together, meaning that certain people might not eat that meal. So they might just come to your house for dinner and not have the meal. But how is it that each particular type of meal The rice is here, the different types of rice, your fish is here, your beef is here, your vegetable is here, all of that. And you're giving each child the opportunity to, each of us who you've invited for dinner, to access different type of meal, and then we bring it to our table and we have our own meal to eat. And that is inclusive education, meaning because, and what's the idea behind inclusive education? We've gone through segregation. We've gone through integration and mainstream. Segregation is where kids have been placed at different places to learn outside. And one big question I ask people all the time: no mall is exclude, no mall practices segregation, not even transit, not even the churches, not even aeroplanes. How come the school is the only place that still wants to segregate people? There is no transit, there's no bus that says, oh, this bus is only for people who are hearing impaired, and this bus is only for people who are neurotypical. Or even when you want to fly an airplane, it doesn't say, oh, we can only take people like this into an airplane. Or even if you go to the mall, it doesn't say, oh, this mall you have to separate, this mall is only for these people on this side. Then why is the school that space that keeps separating people in the society? So inclusion is where everyone is invited into that space.
Excellent, Doreen. Have you have anything to add to that?
Joanne has pretty much covered it all. One thing that I just want to add to that is, just having a child with disabilities in regular class. That's not enough to say that is inclusive education. That physical, there's a difference between physical inclusion. That's just what it is. Oh, you have a child there with everybody else, but is that child getting the supports that they need? Does that child feel like they are part of that learning community? And by the way, when a teacher is prepared to teach inclusively, when they have the skill set to teach kids with and without disabilities, all kids actually benefit. So this is why I'm so passionate about inclusion, about inclusive education. From my own experience, having been a co-teacher during the times when I was going into the regular classroom and teaching alongside a general education teacher who was very strong in content. But I was coming along here with strategies. Having that skill set from the special education field, and with the skill set from the regular educator, all kids benefited, because we found out that the skill set that I brought in, other kids that didn't have disabilities also benefited, from that as well. Not only that, this is how we teach children how to accept each other. This is how we break down stigma. So I just think that the better we can be at preparing educators that are able to support all children, that is the way to go. That really is the way to go. If I can meet a child's needs in the general education classroom without, pulling them out, not only am I supporting that child, but I'm also, supporting, a lot more kids as well.
Yeah. So building on what Doreen has said, when you talk about your teaching, one thing we say placement. I love what Doreen said, the physical placement and just learning, because one thing, a kid can be placed in that space, but not included. It could just be like physical. Oh, that child is in a school in an inclusive space, but not being included in the learning space or the academic or social inclusion. Inclusion can be divided into academic and social. So, oh, Joanne is in this classroom space, but she's sitting at the back of the classroom. It just means I'm there physically, but am I academically and socially included? No. But how can I become academically included? Just as Doreen has said, if teachers are taught or given that, they build a capacity for them to know what we can teach for all, whereby learning starts from the lowest level, from what we call response to intervention, calls it the tier 1 level, where, okay, everybody, we're going to be doing this topic on Romeo and Juliet. I want us to say, who is Romeo? Who is Juliet? That way, even everybody knows Romeo is male, or Romeo takes on the gender of a male, Juliet takes on the gender of a female. That is an entry level into telling everyone about Romeo and Juliet. And then the higher, as the teacher keeps progressing or increasing the knowledge of that topic, definitely even Joanne, who is in that class, knows that Romeo and Juliet, we're talking about male and female, two people who have decided to fall in love, and then because of what's going on, they fall out of love and then they kill themselves. I've just simplified the topic of Romeo and Juliet. That is an entry level for someone, depending on the needs or depending on the exceptionality.
Okay, so let's talk about Africa then. I mean, in your where you can purchase your book, or one place is Amazon, and so you have a description on there about the different countries that you have, and I look at the list and it's so diverse. I mean, education in many ways, but particular in education, it's really diverse in these countries. I mean, the level of education in something like Kenya is quite different from the level of education in Cameroon, and certainly Nigeria and Malawi. I mean, tell me how you, because of all that diversity, how do you write a book that covers all those, where all those countries are at?
So again, like I mentioned earlier on, when we did the call out, so basically myself, Doreen, and Esohe were editors. So each topic in the book were written by different educators from each of those countries on how they access and see inclusive education, which was phenomenal. But you can see, if overarching across everyone who sent in a chapter for this book, it shows that against all odds, they are meeting the needs of the learners in the classroom. In all honesty, being an African, I don't want to say one country is more progressive than the other. It's that education depends on at what level the country is, because most African countries actually ratified the Salamanca framework, meaning that they were part of them saying, we understand the importance of inclusive education in our home country. The next thing is, okay, these are policies. How does this disseminate into our school spaces, into our classroom? But these are teachers against all odds, less funding, less resources, are still pushing. Like from the teacher in Malawi who decided, you know what, I'm doing things for people with visual impairment, or the teacher in Senegal who said, you know what, I've been taught to teach English. I've been told to teach English, but I need to recognize that most of my students do not have French. Senegal is a French-speaking country, but French is not their first language, even though it's the official language. They still have their indigenous language, which is Wolof. And the student actually tells the teacher there, the guy who wrote the author who wrote that chapter, said, making the teacher recognize that, you know what, French is not our first language. We also have Wolof. Please meet us at our needs. That became an eye-opener for the teacher, because he went into that space thinking, oh, all these kids, it's all about French. So it's phenomenal seeing all of these authors share the story, or even the teacher in Uganda bringing in that context of UDL, or the teacher in Ghana. So each of these educators, it's not about the being progressive of the disparity in each African country. It's that overarching layer where they're like, you know what, We understand our classrooms are diverse. We know we have to be in those spaces to teach, but we have to do it against the odds.
And if I can add to what Joanna said, when you read the book, you can see that it also highlights, the resilience. It's not from a deficit kind of narrative, like helplessness, but you can see the resilience. You can also see the local wisdom, the local solutions that they have come up with, and that are not might not be considered evidence based because they're not published in a research articles, but they are working, the different ways that they came up with, strategies to teach the children. They are working in their settings, so that was one of the wonderful things, that I enjoyed when we put our book together. In addition, it's also scholarly. When you read it, you will see that, there's also, research. It blends research. It's also human-centered. It is policy analysis is also, you can see that in the book as well. Just the real life, narratives as well. So, it's kind of covers, so many areas to where a teacher can enjoy reading a book, can enjoy reading our book, but a researcher can also appreciate reading the book and gaining knowledge, from that as well. A parent can also, appreciate the content. I can see students, university students, policymakers as well in those countries that we mentioned. This also being an eye opener, like, oh wow, we have teachers in our country that are doing, these things. So that was just. I'm so glad that we were able to bring these stories to the forefront to let their voices be heard. So it was just a privilege to really work on this project.
So, and that's a really, I love the concept that you had different people write the chapters. I really love that. And so, is it from the teacher's perspective, basically the book? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Is it teacher perspective? Is there perspective of the administrators on there at all, or basically are the chapters written by the teachers?
Most of it, if not all the chapters, were all written by teachers. Every single author here or contributor, they're all educators. For example, the teacher from Cameroon, how the teacher from Cameroon used different, immediate resources like using salt for a kid on the spectrum who is struggling with written output. So instead of introducing the person to pencil or pen, actually put salt on a piece of paper and told the child to use the salt,
Hmm.
sprinkle salt to engage with writing. That is innovative. That is creativity right there.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
using them what they call it, beans and rice. And putting the beans and rice, just arranging it in letters or alphabet forms.
Yeah,
that's not high
multi-sensory.
tech. That's not high tech.
Right. But it's still, but it's still multi-sensory. It's still
Yeah.
multi-sensory. To where the
Right.
child is going to experience, the tactile, the
Yeah.
texture, and that is going to help that child with that. So you could see that that particular teacher that Joanne is discussing, the level of attention that they give to their students, like they know their students very well, what works for this student, because that sort of thing, you really have to understand your learner, and when you're coming up with fine-tuning different activities. And that was something that is evidence, it's evidenced in the book. So it was just it was a real pleasure, Ken. I learned so much.
Exactly.
Because I was thinking too, because that was kind of my next question. In Africa, or you can pick Asia or South America. There's villages and the cities, so the level of education is much different. But now you're telling me about this teacher that uses non-high tech approaches to it, which doesn't matter if you're in a village and you don't have a computer. It's still teaching is still teaching. So tell me, from what you learned, let's take a look in Africa about what you feel are the strengths in inclusive education in Africa, and what are the weaknesses.
That's
Well,
a good question. That's a good question. You know, let's go back to before colonization. You know, Africans, oh, we actually thrived in what we call the collective way of living or being, which in the recent time, you know, we've used the word Ubuntu. I am because you are because I am. We are all in this together. Before colonization came about, we all did things together. We all lived together. I mean, and this was something I had to dig deep into this research when I was writing my own PhD doctoral research. Everybody did things together. We did hunting, shopping, fishing, you know, farming. There was no exclusion. But then when the colonizers came, this is now to Nigeria, they were like, oh, it's time we get people who need to come and work for us in the courts. And so now, if you cannot read, you need to go to certain spaces, and segregation came into being.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when, and I had to do a research to find out, is there a name for disability, or is there a local name for
Mm-hmm.
blindness? Rather, it's referred to as someone who is blind,
Mm-hmm.
someone who is deaf, someone who is hearing impaired, not deaf, not blind.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go back now, moving forward to, you know, there's this conversation now, and I'm glad this is really coming up to fore. New researchers are realizing that we can't talk about inclusive education without going back to that Africanness that is in us, which is the Ubuntu,
Mm-hmm.
because we thrive in collectiveness. And what is inclusion? That we are all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
That's who we are. That's the Africanness. And that's why, yes, now we're going back now to education, the key of what, I mean, I always tell people when they say, who is the most learned person? I will say, it's not the person who went to school. It's someone like my grandmother who never saw the four walls of school, but knew the importance of working together with everyone in the community to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
and just to add to that, Ken, I think your question was the challenges and the positives, right? That was your question, right?
Yeah.
So I think I remember when I was a young child, when they said disabled, I think people would think deaf, blind, and wheelchair. But now there's much more of an awareness. I think that the universities are also doing a good job about that. About neuro divergence. That there are so many different ways that a child's learning can be impacted by disabilities, in addition to what the ones that were visible. So that awareness is there, and also just a lot of research that is coming around, and I think technology has a lot to do with it, because now people have more access to information. So teacher education settings, universities are starting to talk more about it. There's research that is coming out of universities on this. So I think those are some of the progressive ways in inclusive education as well. And of course, the cross-country exchanges, with people like ourselves that are not necessarily in Africa, but we're in other places. But, we are researchers, but we are also collaborating, with people that are in those countries. And we go back and forth, we write together, we publish together, so while we're collaborating, we're also learning so much. This book is an example of it, in that, even though we're not there on the ground in Africa, but by engaging with these authors, reading what they wrote, I can say, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was what was going on in Cameroon with this teacher, using salt. So, it's kind of like a way of, just collaborating and sharing of knowledge. And I'm also seeing, like a more like, I would say, inquisitiveness about, disabilities, about neurodivergence. In the past, I remember being a child, somebody would fail, would repeat, and then they leave school, so that was the end of it. But I'm seeing, more and more now that, oh, okay, teachers are trying to see what they can do, and the universities also we're not, all the problems are not solved yet, but we are making progress because you have inclusive education strategies and majors that are also being introduced in universities, special education, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all those fields are developing, and some are also, well developed, depending, on the country. Like you said, it is broad, but technology is also a big part of it, because with that, now students that were staying at home are able to be in school if they're able to access assistive technology, which, in some settings in Africa, that is happening. So all of those are advances. And now, with artificial intelligence, I see so much potential as well, that we are going to make more progress. Are there not going to be challenges? There are going to be, because we know that to be able to use technology, artificial intelligence, you have to actually have, the technology. But I still see that we're going to make advances with what's available now and what will be.
Yes, and so you're getting back to your book. The book is from the teacher's perspective. Is it basically teachers talking about how they are accomplishing inclusive education? Is that basically the topics that they're talking about? Is that, yeah?
You're on mute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if Joanna was going to answer that. That's why she was looking at me. When you read the book, you will see that, yes, the different ways that the teachers are doing in their capacity to support, diverse learners in their classrooms, kids with disabilities, just innovative ways that they have come up with, that I think that, other teachers could also I could see that other teachers could also, learn from that, and also, try using some of those, strategies as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything?
And coming up with very culturally relevant strategies.
Okay.
Again, because our classrooms are so diverse. And so this is a book where just picking it up, and you have a child from certain context, which these teachers are coming from, that informs anyone reading the book, anyone picking up the book, to say, hey, if this teacher can do this and be successful with this, this can also be included in their daily planning of their classroom and ways to support that learner in their space.
So you get into things like curriculum also?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get into areas such as administrative? areas where the administration we have an author in our club from South Africa, and he writes a book about education in the working class, and his basic premise is that the challenges there all start with the administrators. Do you cover administration at all in the book, or is it?
We do. In fact, one of the chapters in the book is a review that we did on the person that you mentioned, the researcher from South Africa as well. So that was it fit his book, what he wrote about, about all the issues, it fit very well with our book. So we actually did a review on it. And when you also read the teacher stories, we don't necessarily have a principal as one of the, contributors, but, administration is, mentioned in there because it goes, the principals set the tone, but some of them did mention the support that they're getting, or if they're not getting the support. So that's mentioned in there. But I'm glad that you mentioned the research that you're talking about, because we also had a wonderful time reading his work and reviewing it. It's I believe it's in. Is it in the third chapter, Joanne?
It's the second, that's Professor Singamoni Naika's, that's second chapter. That's the third chapter.
The third chapter.
Third chapter.
Yes, it's a great book.
He's working on his next book now, so which I'm looking forward to also. The teachers, are they pretty much from public schools, or are there private school teachers there also?
It's a variety. Public school, private school.
And across the
and some
board.
of them are across the board. The board. Yeah.
So,
across the board. And I would like to add, before I came here to Canada to do my master's and PhD, I was also a school administrator as well. I was a head of school in a school in Abuja. And I know the importance of the role the school administrator plays in pushing for inclusive education. And I know that's one conversation Doreen, myself, Dr. Egiebo, and other people we also, collaborate with on how is it that we can increase the voices or create more awareness for school administrators. Because again, inclusive education is here to stay. Teachers can only do as much as they can if not given the right or given the right support by school administrators. And I remember writing a capstone paper for my master's degree, the role of school principal in supporting inclusive physical. I focused on the curriculum, inclusive physical education. And it just goes to show from my own lived experience, if I'd not been present with those teachers in planning, in designing, in organizing, in connecting, in planning IEP meetings, all of that, teachers will have grappled with supporting their learners in their classrooms. And so school administrators, again, if we look at going back to a model which I love, the Bronfenbrenner's model, which is the micro system where you have the school teachers, school administrators, as well as the macro system where we have government policies and beliefs and cultural beliefs. Everyone has that role to play for us to move inclusive education forward. It takes a lot of, I would say it takes a lot of knowledge and understanding on the school administrators themselves to step outside the box, to go and let's go understand what inclusive education is really all about. Does it include academic and social inclusion? What are some of the things that we need to know? IEP, designing IEP, writing IEPs, planning for all, knowing the different types of framework, UDL, differentiated instruction, all of that. So that once the school administrator is knowledgeable about this, then they can work alongside with their teachers in planning to meet the learning needs of all learners.
Mhm.
Because if a teacher comes to you and says, oh, this child is struggling, and the school administrator does not know what to do, the teacher becomes frustrated, invariably leading the frustration to the teacher. But you find that some teachers go full on to say, you know what, I want to do things to make this learner want to love school and keep coming back to school. And so in this book, these are teachers like this who have decided, you know what, again, I'm going against all odds. I'm taking the bold step to ensure every single learner in my classroom space thrives and achieves academic success.
So let's talk a little bit about, we're talking about basically the students that are going to school, but let's talk about the ones that are not, if you don't mind. Statistics show that 9 out of every 10 children with disabilities do not go to school. And I'm going to pass that on to you and see what you think. What is the solution to that problem? I mean, it's a big problem that has 5 or 6 different reasons for it. So it's hard to put your finger on any one of them. But have you given any thought to students that are not going to school, and how can we work with them?
So like you mentioned, there's so many reasons, right? And it's not like, one solution is going to take care of everything, but we can still do our part. So something that we haven't mentioned yet is just creating breaking down stigma, and that comes with creating awareness. That people with disabilities, they can learn, and they have, we have examples where they have so much to offer to the world. So just creating a negative mindsets. And I think when I say negative mindsets, I think it comes from a place of not understanding disabilities, or not having enough exposure. So I think those of us, adults, teachers ourselves, teacher educators, I think that the role that we can, play is to welcome these kids, first of all, just including, being inclusive, having them in the classroom, showcasing, their work, just, making a climate that is supportive to all learners. And by the way, when I say that, I'm also talking about, how the teachers, the culture, the climate of the school, and the principal sets a very important tone with that, about, how they view, certain students, and, supporting the teachers that are working with the children, and just really, paying attention to all the children, and trying to do what they're able to do in their power to support the teachers. But that's, one thing. The stigma part, we definitely need to continue working on that, because that is a barrier. And I think also, there needs to be, which this is getting better, more dialogue, with teacher education, people like ourselves, and, even in the African context, working alongside teachers, on the ground. Sometimes you see that there's a gap in universities, and, people that are teaching the kids, but we learn so much about what is happening on the ground. And so I think one of the solutions as well, is that continued collaboration, it's happening there. I have colleagues that are, spending time, with teachers in the schools, continuing to do research. So, all these things are, ways forward. And of course, resources are, an issue. Funding is an issue as well. And so I think collaboration with NGOs, organizations in the community or outside, the country as well, just to see if they can find supports to, things like assistive technology. Those things are not, accessible to everybody, but, there are organizations that are able to donate. However, for those organizations to know who to donate to, they do need somebody from there to have that collaboration with, those partnerships are very important. Also, including people in the community, parents are very important. They know their children very well. Their children with disabilities at home. They know different ways that benefit their child. And when we work with parents, regardless of where, when we have that openness, relationships with families, to know that you can get support, you can get information from parents on, how to support each other, and vice versa. The teachers can, support the parents with information about the child's disability,
Mhm.
and the different strategies that they might try at home, or something that they should reinforce at home to support that child. So that
Mhm.
community partnership is very important as well. Yeah,
Well,
Joanne.
Yeah, I mean, you've really hinged on so many of those key points, the public-private partnership. And again, Ken, thank you so much, being the founding president or co-founder of the Rotary, this collaboration and the support from organizations like Rotary to support different other bodies in Africa, because I think it was United Nations that brought out this the data about 25 million. That this is now Nigeria alone, 25 million people out of school, and even out of that 25 million, over 15% of them have some form of disability or not. And again, it boils down to lack of teacher support, poor public-private partnership, or the parental lack of parental support, and the overarching thing about stigma. But then the next thing is, how do we bring out the voices of these families to the fore to say, what, we want to hear from you. What ways can we support you? And this is very, very critical, especially within the African context. But I want to take this to another level. Africans were either very spiritual, you know,
mhm.
we go to different parts of the body, either Christianity or Islam or traditional. The heads of all of these organizations play a big role in the way to push for inclusive education, or for these kids to come out of their hiding places and come out to the fore. If these platforms can be used, and again, this is even from my own research, which what the parents and people I interviewed said, these platforms, we need to use these platforms to come out and say, these people with disabilities are not, quote unquote, they're not, what's the word? They're not people of demonic, or they're not demons. They're part of our society. They're like us. Give them the opportunity to come out and be who they are. Let them try social academic inclusion. Because Africans respect the voices of the people who sit on all of these platforms, if they can come out and say, you know what, these people are like us, they're part of our society, they're part of our community, support them. All the supernatural stigma beliefs that are hanging, they are hanging fruits on everyone's shoulders, we start to dismantle, and we'll see a shift. But the more that those belief systems were still hinged on, oh, the minute you connect with someone with a form of disability is transmissible, we'll still have more of them out of school.
It's such a huge subject. We could go on
It
all day. We
is.
could have
It
a
is.
summit on it. We could have a summit on it. So we're getting to the end of the session here, and I want to make sure I ask a couple of other questions. And the one in particular is, what do you hope will come out of people reading your book? What is your hope for that?
What is the hope? Like we've said over and over again, that just this is a copy of the book here. Just
Mm-hmm.
grabbing a copy of this book and you're accessing, reading the narrative, the story of every single contributor in this book on how they've supported different learners with exceptional needs in their different countries. That way, you picking up this book to read, you can, as an educator, you see other ways to support the learners in your classroom. As a parent, it goes to show that there is hope for your child in Africa. For policymakers, it's time for us to have that paradigm shift, the mindset. You know what? It's time to start giving funding and support to public schools, private school systems, that this
Mm-hmm.
is possible in the continent of Africa, our motherland. So
So
there is a way that anyone, parents, teachers, authors, educators, policymakers, there is something to grab out of this book, and that it's very important.
I am none of those, but I will definitely read the book because it sounds fascinating to me. And where can we get that book?
No, you are one of them. You are one of them. You know where
I'm a
you fall.
learner. I'm learning at this point. So,
You know where
and then,
you're falling. You fall under one who believes in
yes,
inclusive education.
absolutely. Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And that's a whole nother story. But so where can we get your book? It's available
Um,
on Amazon and
it is on Amazon. You can purchase it on Amazon. We have it in three different formats. There's an ebook, there's a paperback, and there's also a hardcover. And you can also find it in Barnes and Noble. They would be able to order. Major bookstores would be able to provide the book. Also on Richie's Place Books. That's another book purchasing type of website. It has a lot of inclusive literature, inclusive, education books and other things. Um, but definitely Amazon, it is there, and we've had a lot of people that have purchased it already. I think it was it ranking bestsellers today, Joanne? Was that today or
Yeah,
yesterday?
it was part of number 51 on the social structure.
wow,
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
That's good.
Yeah.
on
That's excellent.
Amazon.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
I'm always happy when I see people have books on ebooks because then you can read them on Kindle.
Right.
And for me with ADHD, Kindle provides the opportunity to have it read to me, and that always helps with my focus on that. So I'm glad that's the best way I read a book. But let me mention again that I am the president of the Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy. Dr. Doreen is also one of our officers on here. And again, we focus on the human rights of people with disabilities on a global level. And if anybody really wants to get in touch with us and wants to be part of what we're doing, we certainly welcome you. And if I put up the right, yes, I did, the email site here, and this is where you can write to us and get more information about the club. And also, is there a way for getting in touch with one of you two? Is there a way of doing that? So if somebody wanted to specifically write to you, is that or would you rather write to the club?
Well, we are on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yes, so they can find us there if they Google our names. And of course, if they type in our names on Amazon, the book would show up as well. Is there a way to add our email address on this? Or is it-
What I'll do is when it's at this moment, it's not a way of doing it, but I'm going to publish it or post it on YouTube, and that at that point I can put that on there at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
even if you log on to Amazon, you can follow any of the authors on Amazon as well. Yeah.
Great.
So, yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right. Very cool. Thank you for doing this book. It's so important. I can't imagine anybody not in the education, particularly in Africa, but anywhere, will get value from this book. So thank you for doing it. I'm going to call you back and once I've read it, and let's talk about it again, because I don't know if I've had a chance to read it and
Yes.
have some more insights. Okay, much appreciated. Thank you all, and we look forward to your next book then too. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Exactly.
Ken.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Ken. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.